August 30th was the National Awakening Day called upon by the People's Coalition for Civil Action. Since the day of the scheduled protest has now concluded, were the objectives set forth by the People's Coalition for Civil Action achieved? Join us as we discuss this and more only on Beyond the Headlines. Our guest on the program is Mr. Abraham Awolich, the Executive Director of the Sudd Institute, an independent think tank. He is also a signatory to the People's Coalition for Civil Action. Thank you for joining me on the program.
Thank you very much for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yes, thank you. Now that the day of demonstration has passed, how do you determine its success or failure?
Thank you very much for the question. Yes, the success and failure of the demonstrations or the National Day of Awakening is very straightforward from our side, how to measure it. And it is simply whether people of South Sudan are awake and they are concerned about what is going on in their country. And as far as we are concerned, the people of South Sudan have been awakened by the call of the People's Coalition for Civil Action, and they were ready to come to the street in massive numbers. But they, of course, were intimidated and scared by the government when the government deployed so many troops and so many weapons on the streets of Juba, which is a very clear indication that we have succeeded in awakening the people of South Sudan, and they are now awake and they are listening to us and waiting for our instructions.
Warning was issued to the public not to participate in Monday's protest by the government spokesperson and minister, Michael McQuaid-Lueth, who urged the public not to mislead and to resume their business and other obligations as normal. Here is part of what he stated.
As you have been following all this time, there had been a lot of talk in the social media and a lot of messages in the social media by unknown people, by people who have decided to mislead the public, people who have decided to mislead the public, believing that it is only through demonstrations and going to the streets that they can go to the seats of power. Power is not got by force, but it is got through the ballot, not through violence. All these have been happening. The government had been keeping quiet. We have been trying to talk to the people, to inform them, to inform them that you should not allow yourselves to be misled. Unfortunately, people are not listening. There are some who are still insisting and believing that they are in the right track. My advice to all of you, anybody who has allowed himself to be misled, is that he should come to his senses, be sober, and decide soberly.
Now, Mr. Awolich, were you trying to destabilize the country as well as mislead the public?
Not at all. The Michael McQuay and those who think that we are misleading the public should tell the public what is the basis of making that claim. We have said that we want President Salva Kiir and Dr. Riek Machar to resign because they have failed the country. And indeed, the country is failed. I don't think that is misleading. We have nearly 1/3 of our population in refugee camps, and there are still people in our capital, Juba, on the UN protection sites, and in Malakal, in Bor, in Bentiu, even in Akobo. And I'm sure there are still people in Wau. Why are these people still on the protection of UN sites? They are not able to trust their own government to protect them. Isn't that failure? And there are so many people that are being fed by the UN because they are not able to feed themselves. And there is a lot of insecurity everywhere. And there is ethnic killing tribal fights, cattle raiding, child abduction happening everywhere in the country. The economy has collapsed. All of these things are failures of the government. So if that is what they call misleading, then the public is there to judge who is being misled now and who is misleading who. We are not misleading the public. We are clear in our minds, and we are clear in what we are trying to achieve, that South Sudan cannot continue like this for another 10 years. We need change, and we need change now. So it is not misleading. It is a fact, and it is something that we have declared publicly with our signatures.
Days before the scheduled protest, the Inspector General of Police, General Majaka Kech Malak, had this to say about the protest.
We are here to inform our public and our governments and our NGOs and those who have been actually operating in the country, our guests, our tourists who are coming to the country maybe tomorrow, that there are some misleading information in the social media, like when if there will be silent strike or maybe the strike across the country tomorrow. This is a misleading information, and these are not true. Those who are actually manufacturing this information and misleading information that they are trying to actually to send in the social media, they are not been actually official. So this strike is not been permitted by the government, and it is not actually known by the government, and it is not been actually been something that we can consider as a citizen of the Republic of South Sudan to work on these lies that have been actually manufactured by some individuals who are against peace.
Some people have denounced your actions as a ploy to ascend to power of the presidency, and they have alluded to you having previously attempted to gain a governorship post within the country. Therefore, was the protest or you being a signatory to the People's Coalition for Civil Action a ploy or a gateway to sort of like ascend to political power and prominence?
That is very far from the truth. I have been in South Sudan for the last 10 years and working, and I had worked briefly for the government, Ministry of Defense, as a deputy director for policy planning. And I quit that job because I had nothing to do. I was not challenged. So since I left that position, I have never sought to look for a government position at all. In fact, I have been recruited so many times to work for the government, and I have declined. So I'm not interested in any job in the government. A job to do what? There is no dignified job right now in South Sudan government, one that you can do with pride. The country is falling apart. People are divided. The whole world look at us scornfully, as if all of us have failed to lead our country. And so it is not a government that you would be excited to work for. I could have lobbied to become a member of parliament or to become an undersecretary. I have high capacity to do any job, but I have never done it because I didn't think that I could make a difference.
I am sure you've heard by now what occurred on Friday, August 27th, with Radio Jonglei, which is a community-based radio station located in Boortown that was closed by the National Security Services due to concerns over the spread information as it relates to the People's Coalition for Civil Action. Did you initiate communication with the Radio Jonglei, and did you try to ensure that the disseminated information in relations to your initiatives?
We don't call journalists to spread our information. It is actually the journalists who are interested to know more about People's Coalition. Like you are interviewing me now. I did not reach out to you at all, but you want to know information regarding the People's Coalition for Civil Action. So we have not actually contacted Radio Jonglei at all. and we did not talk to them. It's simply out of fear that probably they may be able to broadcast messages from us. We release audio messages or even this interview that you are conducting. So any journalist would want to spread that kind of information to the public. And so it has nothing to do with us that Radio Jonglei was closed down.
The initiative that was undertaken by the People's Coalition for Civil Action for the nationwide protest on August the 30th, will this be the only form of engagement that you plan on establishing with the citizens of the country? If not, are you prepared to wait for the elections to take place? And if you are, how do you intend to carry out and ensure that citizens get to the poll to vote? Because the government has stated that, why don't you wait for elections to take place instead of trying to have people go on the street and protest, and this leading to inciting the public and creating misconduct?
Well, thank you very much. We have a lot of methods that we are going to use to make life difficult for President Salva Kiir and his government. Protest is one of them. Boycotting is another. Popular uprising is another. But talking of elections, the people of South Sudan should not be fooled. There will be no elections. President Kiir doesn't want elections. First of all, let's look at the peace agreement.
How do you know that the president does not want elections, since he has stated quite a few times that he's prepared to go ahead and conduct the elections?
How many times had President told the people of South Sudan that he will not take the people of South Sudan back to war? And how many times did we go to war? So you should not take the president serious on that. Let me tell you why I said the president is not serious. Look at the peace agreement which they are implementing now. And every now and then, since we launch, they go to the microphone and say we are implementing the peace agreement, people should wait and all of that. First of all, that peace agreement is not being implemented. It is a political deception. The military, first of all, the agreement required that before you form the government of national unity, you need to unify the armed forces. The armed forces are not unified right now. The IO still has its army, government has its own army, SOA has its own army. So that condition, that is actually chapter 2 of the agreement, is a prerequisite of having a government. They did not do that. Number 2, the parliament, which was supposed to actually enact a number of laws to enable the implementation of the peace agreement, was delayed. It was not until last Monday when it was inaugurated. And you know what? Last Monday when it was inaugurated, you are left with 12 days until for the agreement to turn 3 years. So on the 12th of September, this month we are talking, 10 days from now, the agreement would have been 36 months since its signature. And the parliament was inaugurated the other day. So now the period of time it will take for that parliament to enact some of the laws that are prerequisite for the implementation of certain provisions in the agreement will take time. And therefore, you are not talking about election until 2025. The third thing I want to tell you is that the refugees, which is 1/3 of the population, has not returned to the country. And the IDPs, you need these people to return to the country so that they can be counted in a census, which is supposed to be conducted. And then now you can use that census to draw the election districts, or what do you call the constituencies. Now, for you to conduct census, you need 3 years preparation. If you want to do a shortcut kind of census, you need about 2 years. Now, all these things are not happening. And in addition to that, you need an election, you need to have a new constitution. These things are not happening. So how do you envision an election with 3 different armies, with people that are supposed to come home to vote, they have not come, and with the parliament that is supposed to enact laws just being inaugurated now, and there is no explanation whatsoever why it took this long for the parliament to be inaugurated. So I'm telling you, my sister, that the people of South Sudan are being lied to. They are being deceived. There will be no election. The government and the opposition are not committed to have an election. They want to have this power arrangement, which can be extended and extended. And if they cannot extend it anymore, they go back to war so that they can negotiate another transition. And they are planning to have this for the next 10 years. We can't wait. We cannot wait for that.
Here is what the presidential press secretary, Aten Wekaten, had to say in relations to the elections.
Let the parties first agree when to hold the election, and let them do the process that will lead to election. Let them first study census. Census also required money. It is like an election because people will go all over, okay? And it's even more than election because you will be writing the names of even minors, the people who are even the child that is born tonight, okay? His or her name has to be registered. But the election, you will only register the adult suffrage. It will include even the mayor of the city, not anybody that will be left out from the election. Starting from presidential, okay, governors, okay, and commissioners, they are all to go for election, including the mayor, local elections, and the general election. Nobody is going to be left out of this. And the will of people of South Sudan will prevail to determine the leadership from grassroots up to the central level. So there's nobody going to be left out of the election.
The government has called on the People's Coalition for Civil Action to come to the table and discuss any issues as brothers and sisters. Are you prepared to do that?
Absolutely. Provided that the discussion, the basis of any discussion is how to ensure peaceful exit of President Salva Kiir and Dr. Riek Machar. It cannot be about anything else because we are not fighting. We don't want any share of power whatsoever, and we don't want to be ministers or we don't want to be given money. All we need is for President Kiir and Dr. Riek Machar to step aside. So if the dialogue and the table that we are going to be called on is discussing that, count us in. But if that thing is not on the table, we are out.
Now, we know that the government, of course, has stated that they are prepared to once more participate and ensure the elections take place in 2023. Now, if they state that, why don't you just go ahead and wait until 2023 instead of creating disharmony within the society?
Yes, I wanted to tell you that it is not us who are creating disharmony in the country. Look at the peace agreement first. Now the IO has a split, and Gedwiji and his group, which have made what they call Kitgwang Declaration, they are saying they have given the government up to the 15th of September. And if they don't remove Riek Machar as first vice president so that they can replace him, and if the ministerial portfolios that are under IO are not given to them, they are going to fight. So that is what we are even worried about more than having an election. So we are closer to war now than we are to an election. And so we are not creating disharmony. We are simply saying those who have created disharmony, who have divided the people of South Sudan along ethnic and regional lines, and those who have failed to lead the country should step down now so that we can have a more peaceful election. Imagine an election where President Kiir is running and Dr. Riek Machar is running. Assume that they actually commit to have that election. Now somebody loses. Dr. Riek Machar loses, for example, or President Kiir loses, and they claim that, oh, I got cheated. That is war right there. And so there is no hope. Even if there were to be an election, we are not hoping that there will be peaceful elections. There will be war at the end of that election if President Kiir and Dr. Riek Machar are the contestants. If they come forward, however, and say, give us the end of the transitional period, and we are not going to contest in the next election, we are willing to talk.
Now, if the government goes ahead and charges you with inciting an uprising and attempt to create disorderly conduct, are you prepared to go ahead and face the government on this particular issue?
Well, that would be what they call political intimidation. We have not committed any crime. We are acting within the Constitution of South Sudan. We are granted by our Constitution the right to create political parties, to affiliate with political parties, and to speak freely. And the people of South Sudan have been given the power as the sovereign. They are the sovereign. And the sovereign is not constrained by any law. If they collectively decide that they want to take their country to a different direction, using democratic and non-violent means, they have a power to do that, including the power to protest. And so there is no basis for the government to charge us with inciting violence or disorder. We have not done that. And in fact, we have lived to what we preach. We said we don't want any violence on the streets of Juba or anywhere else. And our supporters, they did not throw any stone or even burn any tires or broke any cars or any shops. They remain silent wherever they are. And so the government has no basis for that. There is not even a single incident of somebody having thrown any stone. So why would the government say there is a disorder? If at all somebody has to be charged with any disorderly conduct, it is the government that has brought tanks out against ordinary people to threaten them, and artillery pieces and heavy machine guns on the streets of Juba, which is again against a violation of the peace agreement, which says that Juba should be demilitarized. It is overly militarized right now. And so we definitely would not accept any such charges. They will be politically motivated and they would be aimed at silencing us.
In a press release by US Senator Patrick Leahy, he stated the following: the NSS shut down the Sudd Institute, a think tank involved in the creation of the People's Coalition for Civil Action, and issued arrest warrants for Rajab Mohandis and Abraham Awolich, two other signatories of the declaration who have gone into hiding. This suppression of dissident is not new in South Sudan. The senator went on further to state, President Kiir may not know that Abraham Awolich was one of the now famous Lost Boys who as a child survived the civil war that killed most of his family, endured malnutrition, and escaped attacks by rebel groups seeking child soldiers, only to find himself alone in a refugee camp. He eventually was resettled in the United States, arriving in Vermont in 2001, graduating from the University of Vermont, becoming an American citizen, and going on to get his master's degree. He was my constituent for many years, and I am very proud of the work he did as a member of the South Sudanese diaspora community who returned to his native country to help rebuild. What prompted you to establish contact or communication with Senator Leahy?
Well, I didn't make any contact at all with Senator Leahy. It is actually people who live with me when I was in Burlington, Vermont, and who actually reached out to him because they were concerned on my safety and my life. So they did engage his office, and they also engaged the office of Senator Benny Sanders, people that I know in person. When I was there, I used to advocate for the rights of the people of South Sudan to become independent in their offices and also in the state capital. So there are a number of resolutions that were passed as a result of our activity down there in support of South Sudan referendum. And so it was not me who reached out to him. These are friends and relatives who thought that my life was in serious danger. And if they could do anything, they would. Those are the people who reached out to him. And that is why he had to respond in that way.
Mm-hmm. Now, Senator Lely, you stated that if the government does not change its tactics, the U.S. government might sort of lower their support of South Sudan. What do you have to say to that?
Well, I think that South Sudan has already lost the support of the United States to a larger degree, because there were certain shared values that drew the United States closer to South Sudan, and that include the democratic values, respect to human rights, and respect to the right of political pluralism in the country, and the right of people to speak freely. So let's say generally the respect for civil rights. So there is no convergence anymore between the United States and the government of South Sudan. And so the support that Patrick Leahy is talking about is probably more a humanitarian kind of support that is there now. But much of the political support, as well as developmental support, the U.S. has reduced that significantly. And so whatever little that is left could disappear, especially in light of what has happened now in Juba. So those things make those countries who value human rights and who value dissent and political pluralism, they definitely would be in conflict with the government of South Sudan.
We've been joined at the program by Mr. Abraham Awolich, the Executive Director of the Sudd Institute, an independent think tank. Thank you for joining me here on Beyond the Headlines.
Thank you very much, Eunice, and I appreciate it. My regards to all the listeners.
Thank you. We shall be seeking the government's perspective on what has been stated by Mr. Abraham Awolich. Otherwise, viewers, thank you for tuning in on Beyond the Headlines, and please join me next time.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube page at Sunrise Media.